Back to answer more of your asks. If we look at it from a lore or narrative standpoint, Beth is technically currently the last Greene family member alive. Sure, Maggie's still here, but she's already adopted and took after her late husband Glenn's last name, that I don't think the Greene no longer applies to her despite her being Herschel's daughter and being born as a Greene. Yeah, so this got talked about a lot. I want to say it was season 7 or 8, whenever it was. It was when Gregory was still on the show before Maggie had him hung. She does that. She calls herself Maggie Ree instead of Maggie Greene, which is understandable. You know, she's taking her husband's name. But yeah, there was a lot of talk about that and how Beth is really would be the only surviving Greene. And so, you know, especially assuming that we're right and she's coming back, I feel like they did that on purpose. And it seems like there was even people that told me that she doesn't do that in the comic books, that that was something specific to the show. So it was very intentional. And, you know, given that the Greenes were such a big deal and they were so early on in the show's mythology, you know, they were season 2, they came in, that's kind of important, right? That we have a surviving Greene. So, and people even pointed out that Daryl called her Greene a few times. I mean, it was only like when he was pissed off and they were fighting in still, so it's not like all the time or anything. But he did call her that, which was probably intentional and just putting an emphasis on her last name. So yeah, I agree. And it's something that's you know, another thing we can point to as her, you know, a reason for her to be alive. So thank you. Hi, dear. Lately, I was wondering if Daryl is still wearing Beth's dagger or if I missed something in the meantime. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. I hope you have a good day. Thank you. Greetings from Italy. There is someone here who follows you from here too. Wow. Well, hello, Italy. It's nice to have you. Yeah, so I don't know if he has it with him in Europe. But, and again, this was several years ago when they were still doing the Walking Dead cruises. And the main reason I know this is I have a friend who was actually on this cruise and watched this panel, but they were doing the Walking Dead cruise. And there was a panel where they got to, you know, audience members got to ask questions and everything. And somebody asked if Daryl still had Beth's knife, and he said yes. And he was very, it wasn't like he was a little unsure or looked at Nicotero or anything like that. Like he was just like, oh yes, yes, he does. He's got it somewhere. So we don't know where it is exactly, and I don't know that I would necessarily assume he wears it all the time. That would be great if he did. It would be super cool if like he actually has it on him when you know, he finds her, assuming he finds her in Europe. But I mean, we don't see it very often. We certainly don't see him wearing it. It kind of disappeared during book or season 6. I almost said book 6. Um, and so, you know, you could argue that he doesn't have it anymore, but Norman said that he does. So he's got it somewhere. He's got it kept somewhere safe. And, you know, it's not that I don't think he would carry it with him. It's just that I feel like there's too many times he would have lost it by now. I mean, even if like, say he always had it with him and he kept it in his motorcycle when he left, well, he lost the motorcycle. And because he was taken as a prisoner, what are the chances they let him get anything off that motorcycle? You know what I mean? So it just seems to me that it wouldn't be terribly logical that he has it on his person. Of course, I could be wrong about that, but I think he does still have it somewhere. So yeah, really good question. And just the fact that Norman was so like absolutely 100% he has it. I mean, we know that they're not going to tell us something that was untrue. And if he didn't know the answer to that, he would probably look to one of the showrunners. And he already knew the answer. He was very confident about it. And that to me says that there is some plan there going on with that knife and with the fact that he knows that Daryl still has that knife. So that is just a good thing for us, right? All right, next one. Does Rick remember Beth at all? In The Ones Who Live, Rick had an artist paint an image of Carl for him because he was starting to forget his own son's face since Carl's passing. Not gonna lie, that actually made me tear up. I can't ever imagine what that must have been that for a parent losing memory of their lost child, especially if it's their very first eldest child. Beth played a big role in Judith's early life, and she wouldn't be where she is today if it weren't for a lot of TF people, but especially Beth herself, Ty and Daryl and Carol. What do you think? Um, in terms of Rick, I'm sure he remembers Beth. I don't know if you mean remembers her at all or remembers what she looks like. I think, you know, it's very possible that he doesn't. The thing is, even to say they don't remember what they look like isn't entirely true. It's just that the details of their face tend to fade. And I think a lot of us take that for granted because we have pictures and video and the internet and all these kinds of things. But if you really aren't around someone that long and you don't see them all the time, then the details start to fade. So I can see that being the case for Rick where Beth is concerned, for sure. But remember that they did have pictures of Beth at Hilltop for a while above Maggie's desk. And I'm sure Rick saw them at some point, before Hilltop burned down. So yeah, I mean, in terms of that, that could be the case. But I think he still remembers who she is and everything. The fact that she played a small role in his hallucination before the CRM took him, we didn't see her, but we heard her voice, shows that she's one of those people that Rick feels guilty about still, about what happened to her. And I think he feels guilty about everybody who has died under his leadership. So that's why we saw all those people. We saw Shane, we heard Lori, we saw Sasha, we heard Abraham's voice, and it goes on and on. And Beth was one of them. He saw Herschel, but he heard Beth. And so I think that it is part of his trauma and one of the people he's lost. So of course he remembers her. Um, but yeah, I think that he will be as happy as anyone else that she's alive. And we'll just have to kind of wait and see how it plays out and what they do with it. So yeah, great question. Anonymous says, I remember reading an interview shortly before the airing of episode 5-8 Coda, where it was said, I think it was Scott Gimple himself, that the reunion with Beth would be bittersweet. In reality, what happened was tragic, so I wonder if Gimple was referring to something else, maybe the real reconciliation, the one that marks Beth's return. It would be sweet, since it would be discovered that Beth is still alive. Bitter instead, because the situation would bring with it complex and difficult to manage emotions and circumstances, Daryl's sense of guilt, Beth's possible memory loss. Personally, I would prefer that Beth remembered, but had the conviction of having been abandoned. I would see more interesting dynamics. Also, Daryl could be the one this time who scratches and destroys the defenses and walls that Beth has built up in the meantime, since I really believe that in the past years she has hardened on her own. It would be a sort of still episode in reverse. What do you think? Thanks and have a nice day. I 100% agree with everything you've said here. So let's take it kind of paragraph by paragraph. Yeah, I mean, I can sort of see the Coda reunion being described as bittersweet. Obviously, we understand the bitter part, but I don't know. Sweet is just kind of a strange word to use because they didn't really get to have much of a reunion. As you know, I know I'm preaching to the choir with this. Everybody has pointed out they didn't get to talk, they didn't get to hug, they didn't, you know what I mean? So I think when Daryl saw her and that she was alive and she's standing right there, it would almost be more relief than sweetness in that moment. And then, of course, the relief was very short-lived when she got shot. So yeah, it is kind of a strange way to describe it. But I can also see Gimple saying that, like, maybe he meant it's more bittersweet for fans because we're like, yay, and then, oh, you know. But yeah, I agree. He could have also been definitely pointing to something in the future. Um, and yeah, I agree. I personally would prefer that she remembered too. I think we do have some evidence that there might be some um, memory issues. And one thing that we haven't really considered, I was thinking about this a little bit this past week. So I was kind of basing it on Benjamin saying that he had no memory before a certain point, but it also could be that Beth has some memory and some not. Like maybe she does have some memories of Daryl and their time together on the road, but she doesn't remember Maggie or something, like more the stuff that happened before the turn or, something like that. So it could be like kind of piecemeal too. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Anyway, but I agree with you. I would actually prefer that she didn't have the memory loss because I think it would be more emotional that way. And I 100% agree that I think this is going to be sort of the opposite of Still, where he'll have to break through her defenses. I totally think that's where they're going with it. And I think that she is going to be hardened, and I think that she will have, for whatever reason, there could be lots of reasons for it, really built up defenses around herself in order to survive. So yeah, I totally agree. And I think that a lot of us are thinking that way. And yeah, it is partially headcanon, but I also think that they've given us a lot of setup for that. And so it's not just something that we're hoping for or making up. It's something that makes sense with what they've done with the narrative so far. So sort of on a subconscious level, we're picking up where they're going with it. And even if not all of those details are exactly correct, we're still like kind of getting the gist, right? So yeah, I totally agree. And I'm with you on that. Um, so yeah, great observations. And oh, the other thing I was going to say is that there's another, and I have it somewhere. I'll try to link it in the show notes if I can find it. There was another interview done. It was Gimple and Larry King, and it was just before season 5 aired. And Larry King was asking him because, of course, everybody wanted to know if he was going to find Beth. The last thing we saw, she got taken from him. That's what everybody was talking about, the end of season 4. And Larry King asked something along the lines of whether Daryl would eventually find happiness in the apocalypse, like his happy ending, right? And I don't remember exactly how the question was asked, but it was um, almost like Larry King was saying, you don't even have to specify Beth, just in general, whatever's happened with her, will Daryl Dixon eventually, I think he said eventually find love. And Gimple said he kind of beat around the bush for a minute, and then he was going, well, can't say anything really here or there. And then he goes, but overall, yes, I think she's going to. So, I mean, honestly, at the beginning of season 5, anyone who saw that, it probably added to the anger because they would have assumed that he meant Beth and that everything was going to be okay. And then when she got shot, again, that's just probably added to people feeling a little bit betrayed by some of the things that the showrunners had said. Um, and looking back on it in hindsight, you can definitely say, well, he didn't say it would be Beth or that he didn't say that it was going to happen that season, but he did say that he would find love eventually. And now here we are at Daryl Dixon, the spinoff, and we know that that's where it's going, that he's going to find his happy ending because of Judith's voiceover and because of everything that they've put in the show that we've all discussed a lot and beaten to death. So, um, like I keep saying, if it really is somebody else, then I'll stop harping about Beth coming back. But I really don't think it's going to be. We have way too much evidence that it's going to be her. And Gimple was being he was saying yes, but also being kind of coy about it, I think. So anyway, just when you asked about this interview with Gimple before Coda, it reminded me of that one. Like I said, I know that I did a meta on it a long time ago. I'll try and find it. All right, next one. It may have already been pointed out, but rewatching episode 510, when Daryl mourns Beth's death at a certain point, in the scene where he inflicts the burn with a cigarette in front of him, there is a branch that very much resembles a cross. It has been said several times that crosses and the figure of Jesus are symbols closely associated with Beth and her possible resurrection. Coincidences? No, probably not. We always look at things in the background, even things, shapes that are made by random objects in the scene, because we know that they set the scene very, very carefully, that everything is done intentionally. And we've seen that. I mean, that's a fact. We've seen them tell us that in interviews and, when they're talking about special effects and set dressing and things like that. So we know that they do that. So like a good example that we've just gone through in the last few days is that bridge that's from 301, the first 4 minutes of Daryl Dixon 301, and you have that chevron, and it's directly across from the car. So you could always argue, oh, that was just the bridge they were on, and it just happens to have that really is part of the bridge. I'm sure that it is. I'm sure that's true. But if they really didn't want it in the shot, they could have filmed at a part of the bridge that was further down so they didn't get that in the shot. And they could have put the car somewhere else so that it wasn't directly across from the chevron, and even if that's there and they kind of have to include it in the wide shot, if they don't want it there, you guys, wake up to AI. They can take it out with the computer if they really want to. They didn't. They very specifically put the car directly across from that chevron. And they, on top of that, had all of this interesting dialogue going on while they were passing that. You see what I mean? Like it's done intentionally. So if I don't know that I ever noticed the cross that was there. And back when 510 aired, we were not looking nearly as closely at any of these things, so very well could have missed it. But if there is one there and it's very obviously near him, then yeah, I absolutely think it was intentional. And I will say that in that case, I mean, there's layers of symbolism, right? And I do think that could have been more about Daryl in the sense that this is his pain and he's being, I mean, he was self-harming at that point, but I mean, he's so deep in the sadness that he almost becomes his own sacrificial lamb then. But of course, it's because of Beth. So either way, it kind of loops back to her. But yeah, if that's there, then I 100% think it was on purpose. I think that you're definitely on the right track here. And yeah, just a great observation. So, all right, guys, I'm going to end there for now. I have plenty of other things to talk about, but I will be back next week to talk about them. Okay. Everyone have a wonderful week, and hopefully we get lots more stuff about the upcoming season of Daryl Dixon season 3 soon. And actually, because it's coming in September, we don't actually have that long to wait. It's only a couple of months, so that's a good thing. Anyway, talk to you soon.